Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third and final holiday special of Cookie Pocket's 2024 to 2025 lineup. And this time, that's actually true. In all the previous holiday specials, I've on my hard drive and on Letterboxd, I've written them as year-to-year specials, but we've always had it done in one. But we're putting this one out in the new year. And originally, it was going to go out on Christmas Eve, but now it's going out on Three Kings Day, which is technically the end of the Christmas season. So I don't want to hear anybody nipping at our heels.
Season? Why is it, Zach? Explain to me what Three Kings Day is, please.
Three Kings Day is apparently the three wise men arrived at Bethlehem to view the baby Jesus 10, 12, a certain number of days after Jesus was born on Christmas Day, which is celebrated on Three Kings Day, January 6th. Which, unfortunately, is a date associated with other things nowadays. But
it's the 12 Lords of Leaping, Zach. The 12 Lords of Leaping.
Yes, it is also the 12th day of Christmas. So, La Befana, which is an Italian thing, I'm told, where there was a little old lady who gave the three wise men food to fuel them on their journey. Three Kings Day. It's all the same thing. It means that today, as you're listening to this, unless you're listening to this, like, a week after we put it out. Today, the day of release, is the final day of Christmas. So we got it in under the wire. Woo! Anyway, we're talking about a movie. Today, we're going to be discussing Cash on Demand, which is a Hammer thriller from the late 50s, early 60s. I think it's 61. I meant to look this up and I didn't. But it's different from the other Hammer films that we've watched, or at least that we've talked about. I've talked about a couple Hammer films on the show. We watched The Curse of Frankenstein, but Hammer is kind of known for their lurid, colorful horror. But this is very different and from around the same period. It's a pretty kind of locked down, simplistic heist movie almost, where Peter Cushing plays the manager of a bank. Andre Morel plays a very well-spoken thief who's intent on stealing the bank's money on the day before Christmas Eve, and we kind of see the interplay between these two men over the course of a day as this very polite heist plays out. What did you guys think of Cash on Demand?
I think we know who's going.
Yeah, we know who's going. Here we go. I gave Cash on Demand a 2.5, and I sat on it for a little while after watching because I had trouble identifying things that were explicitly wrong about it. But ultimately, I think my score boils down to the fact that I just wasn't that thrilled by what is billed as a thriller. And having read your review, Zach, I kind of wish that I watched the UK cut or the shorter cut that you referenced.
Okay, so did you guys both watch the longer? There's two versions of this movie. There's like a little over an hour one for the UK, and there's like an 80-minute one that was released in the US. Did you guys both watch the longer?
Jeff Bezos version, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, ditto. that is what Amazon Prime offered me, and I think that first 20 minutes is probably where most of that additional footage lies, because there's a lot of kind of slow exposition of him wandering into the bank and a grumpy exchange with a couple of his employees where it's very obvious that they're setting up Cushing's character to be a stand-in for Scrooge. And then a few minutes later, when the threat of a robbery first rears its ugly head, there's, I think, a bit of thematic backpedaling where he calls his, or I guess, I don't remember if he calls his wife or if they call the bank, but the sort of method of coercion is that they're going to electrocute and kill his wife if he doesn't comply, which I think is a very sinister and specific threat. And that was probably like one of the more effective notes of this for me is the specificity of that type of torture or death was unexpected and alarming. But I still think there's some maybe unconvincing or inconsistent character work there. I feel like the sort of Scrooge angle was more of a way to tie it into Christmas more, and it just kind of bugged me. But all in all, I thought most of the performances were very mannered. I guess most of the time it's Cushing and the bad
Mhm.
guy, but with my prejudice goggles on, I felt like everybody was speaking in a very similar mannered and straightforward British accent, and it just felt very, I guess, artificial at times, for lack of a better word. And I thought I would like it more. I appreciate the directorial craft and certain visual things. Like for something that is a television product ostensibly, I thought it looked better than I expected, but I just wasn't really hooked at any point. And I feel like certain twists and plot developments were sort of undercut by information that we were given and the way that we were given that information. So 2.5. I wanted to like it more. It's not terrible, but just wasn't outstanding to me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Yes.
Mitchell
I
is
must
buffering.
I must adhere. I must adhere to a similar opinion. I think.
It's Christmas. Of
I
course.
think. Yeah. I think 2.5 is fair because I also gave it the same rating, and I have to agree that they were very straight talking. And sure, I agree. I am also racist against British accents, but I will also say that I think everyone was very static to a fault, as if they kept trying to play the same idea over and over again. It really felt like I wasn't getting the point, and the film was trying to tell me what the point was over and over again, where it's like, haha, he's gloating, haha, he sucks. It's like, all right, I get that. Like that's the actual heist, and the way it's performed is more interesting to me. And I feel like a lot of the focus was on the fact that, like, I got you. I got you. You suck. You know, I got your wife, and you never bothered to ask or even inquire or question, because your personality just makes you want to panic immediately and not ask any questions. And even when he does eventually ask questions, and even goes as far as to give a threat himself, he still is not like questioning anything or putting anything in perspective, which is fine. He's under distress. We all don't know how we're going to act under distress. Fair enough. It's not entirely out of the realm of believability, but I do think that they play that note over and over and over and over and over again, and it's kind of annoying. Like, I get it, fine, he's gloating, and he figured him out, and he's got the whole thing figured out. And the fact that that is the punchline also makes it even worse, because he doubles down, and then the police are like, well, okay, well, we'll just let him go. Like, there's no neutral party, no like formal full on investigation that we're like really like privy to at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of just like, let's just make fun of Peter Cushing and make him cry and imagine what's happening, you know, to his wife and son the entire time. And that's literally what you take away from this whole thing. So I heavily dislike definitely the last probably 20 to 30 minutes more than the rest of the film. I heavily enjoyed the setup and the setup of his character, and I do totally understand and I agree with this concept fully, that he's kind of articulate about everything, and he's very authoritarian with his staff, and then all it takes is a robber to outsmart him, to completely crumble his entire personality. And that's a great concept for like maybe a 15 to 20 minute short film or something, not for even an hours long thing where it's like, okay, I know what's going to happen. He's going to get the money, and he's barely going to get away with it. How is he not going to get away with it? And then once again, reiterating that punchline that he's one step ahead, even though he's still getting arrested. He's one step ahead. You know, it's kind of like the last feeling you get. So that whole emotional takeaway for me, it was just entirely about irony and gloating the whole time. And it's not a Christmas movie. 2.5 out of 5.
Ooh,
okay.
The gauntlet has been thrown.
So I will certainly agree with something that I think both of you guys have expressed, maybe not in so many words, but it is definitely a very English movie. And I do think kind of the logic of the movie, and even kind of the forgiveness of the conclusion, relies on kind of its setting in this little kind of country town where issues are kind of dealt with in their own kind of local way, and the law and crime can kind of be contained to a smaller area. I mean, this is also set at a time where I feel like a lot of kind of law enforcement, pretty much everywhere, didn't exist on as like national or unified a scale as it kind of does now, at least in the UK, at least. And I find that setting believable. For me, it works in the same way that the conclusion of something like It's a Wonderful Life works. Now, not in the same emotion. I'm not saying this instills that same emotion. But if you think about It's a Wonderful Life, even if George Bailey's friends and family donated all this money to make up the money that was missing from the building and loan, if the police still had reason to believe he stole that money, he's still going to jail. But the setting of It's a Wonderful Life and the tone and the fact that it's Christmas makes us believe, okay, well, in the little town of Bedford Falls, we forgive and we forget and we believe in the goodness of the human spirit, especially when it's George Bailey. And so I that kind of feel is kind of sufficient to hand wave maybe some of the legal quandaries of the conclusion. I will say, I think, Christian, you mentioned that the direct comparisons to Scrooge kind of led to what you saw as issues in the way that the characters portrayed. I'm interested if you felt those same inconsistencies, Mitchell. Did you also see like, oh, well, if Forsyth is such a jerk, like, why does this family angle come in only a few minutes later?
I wasn't really thinking of Scrooge that much. I felt
Okay.
like, but now that you're bringing it up, it's like, well, if that was their intention, they really, really botched that comparison. It's like barely even recognizable. I mean, it is like a Scrooge-esque. I'm not saying literally Scrooge, a Scrooge-esque archetype. I understand that. There's just not enough of a sufficient connection to the holiday. This kind of goes into also why it's not really a Christmas movie to me. I mean, you can kind of apply this to any like good-natured moral or any ethic at all, really. Like, you could just say he's not a good Christian or something, or just make that argument. Like, seriously, you just make that argument. Or like, he's not a good businessman, or he's not a good he doesn't, he's not an ethical leader. Like, they could have got into that pretty easily. And they don't really address it that much. I mean, he has like his quick turnaround at the very end after his experience, but other than that, it's like, yeah, I feel like if there was any attempt to put Christmas in this, it was very ham-fisted, and the most I saw was snow in the background and that Santa asking for money outside. That was basically, and the slight quips, a part of all the other gloats. There's a few quips in there associated with it.
Yeah, I can agree. I will say that I don't necessarily see this as like a direct adaptation of Scrooge or anything like that. I see it as kind of more of an influence, and it's something that you kind of notice later, maybe after watching it. You think, oh, that kind of was like a Christmas Carol story for that character. And for me, I think maybe that's kind of why Forsyth as a character works, because I'm not thinking of him as, oh, this miserly old skinflint. And I don't necessarily think the movie tries to portray him as that. I think even in the longer cut, the emphasis is a little different, because there is kind of a tiny little scene. It's during one of the boring banking arguments at the beginning in the US cut. But there's a moment where Cushing's character emphasizes like their duty to the people of this town. Everybody keeps their money there. And so it's their job to be diligent. And it might not be fun, but that's their job. And so I think that is a really important moment for that character, which isn't in the UK cut, but it emphasizes that he's not just a miserable, horrible old ghoul like Scrooge. He's a man that takes his work very seriously, maybe to the detriment of his interaction with other people. But I can kind of believe that sort of a character would maybe have more of a caring home life, because maybe that's the only place that he actually directs any of that energy or any of that part of himself. It's not really something I'd thought about with a great deal of attention until you mentioned it, Christian, but I do think it's not necessarily as much of a trip maybe for me as it it seems as it was for you, Christian.
Yeah, you make a couple of good points there. The sort of angle that his seriousness is about the importance of the service they do, as opposed to just an overwhelming greed that is portrayed by Scrooge. That's an important distinction. I still think in the U.S. cut, he sort of gets mad at one of his employees because she's putting all of her Christmas cards on the desk. And that was like a Scroogey moment, but that distinction is still worth noting. I think Mitchell's complaint about it not being a Christmas movie is very interesting to me, and it does feel like we're bookended by two Christmas songs playing us in and out, and there's the one like Salvation Army Santa, and other than that, it could be taking place. And I guess the employees' cards, Christmas cards.
Yeah.
But other than that, it seems like it could be taking place on any other day. But at the same time, I think this might have more of a connection to Christmas than something like Moonstruck did. Even though we chose three very different movies in terms of genre, I feel like they've all been kind of similarly underwhelming to me in that they're all sort of passive viewing experiences that you can sort of put on, and most to everybody in the room will tolerate or enjoy parts of all of them, but none of them are really iconoclastic or risky or especially memorable in their own right.
Yeah, I will agree that this has been Cookie Pocket's thoroughly average holiday special, TM. I will say, and not to dredge up the old argument, but I think on paper, this is as much a Christmas movie as something like Die Hard, because I don't think the Christmas setting is entirely incidental. I do think there's some mention by Andre Morel's character that, the timing of this heist is important because this bank specifically has all this money because it's Christmas, which is, I believe, part of the plot in Die Hard as well. They have a lot of the stuff in the basement specifically because of the season. Die Hard is also bracketed by Christmas songs and Christmas imagery, and in between it's kind of just stuff on office desks and things throughout the movie. I think our conclusion in the Die Hard episode that we did forever and a day ago was that Die Hard is a Christmas movie if it's fun for you to think of it as such. And these are very different movies still. I could see why this would not be as fun to think of as a Christmas movie for someone. But I do think on paper, at least on a literal level, there is as much Christmas on a metric scale in Cash on Demand as there is in Die Hard.
If Cash on Demand had an office Christmas party, I think they'd be equal. But
they're building up to one the whole time.
Slight edge.
I agree with Christian. Zach's wrong.
It's close. Okay. It's close. But it's not quite.
So if we saw the office Christmas party, then it's Chekhov's office Christmas party.
It really, Zach, if all it is for this film is if it's the timing, then you could basically use that for any holiday where the banks are affected in that same manner.
Oh, you could.
And but I don't think you can do that with Die Hard.
I think Die Hard pretty essential that movie.
They're not having an Easter party. Zach.
No, that's a good point. Die Hard could be a Halloween movie.
Yes, it could be Halloween.
That's probably the second best, but even that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I will say though, mentioning Chekhov's Christmas party, I thought it was interesting. I never realized until this viewing that I did right before this recording that this kind of violates that dramatic rule, because there is a gun that appears in the first act and it never comes back at any other point in the movie. They never even find the ammunition for it in either cut of the movie. So that did intrigue me. I don't think the movie is worse for it. It's just something that I found interesting. Mitchell, you made mention of the heist itself and how it plays out and how Cushing's character is kind of like talked into everything without ever being presented with any hard facts. I think that is an important part of the movie, is that Andre Morel's character, who I don't think ever gets a real name, he goes by Colonel Gore Herring or something like that. Gore Hepburn. That's it. That's
Yeah.
like his fake name that he's putting on. But we learn later that's not his real identity. But the film really relies on him and his personality to kind of talk his way through this whole heist. Were you guys convinced by that character? Did he come across as somebody who could pull that off? A personality that could kind of forcefully just make that work for himself without the cold hard facts?
Now I can't get Die Hard out of my head. So I'm just thinking of Hans Gruber. And the gunpoint is an interesting one because there's this whole thing about how you wouldn't expect him to be a gunman or whatever, and then it just kind of doesn't come back again. I guess conceptually I admire the idea of making him this sort of strange, off-putting antagonist, but I don't think I ever felt truly threatened by him. I think, especially when they're sort of pushing the Christmas angle in the first couple of minutes, and it's sort of in parentheses a Christmas movie, I feel like there's almost a baked-in assumption of fewer consequences, and the ending it certainly accords with that, and was probably my biggest issue. Is I thought what could have been the most compelling moment is when he sort of successfully frames Four Eyes for being his accomplice. But they all say his name that way. I'm not
It's
crazy.
Four Dice. I confirmed on Wikipedia. It's Four
Okay.
Dice.
Sure. Not Forsyth still.
No.
But I think maybe this would have gotten over the 2.5 to 3 threshold if he was actually taken away, or if there was any sense of consequence for the duplicity, as opposed to Colonel What's-His-Face going, "Oh, just kidding. I would have picked somebody much better than him to help me with this." At that point, it's just kind of, I didn't literally roll my eyes, but I was just kind of like, okay, well, what was the point of all this? And I think it made him feel less threatening. And even if that was his plan all along, the sort of menacing presence was less because of that.
Okay.
So I think it's good that you asked this, Zach, because I do think I'm willing to suspend disbelief. I definitely think it's a believable character. And I do think, like, historically, this has definitely happened to some degree. Maybe not to this perfection, obviously, but there have definitely been some very powerful, charismatic swindlers in history that have been very successful and totally gotten away with it.
Yeah.
With the right circumstances and the right personalities, you can totally achieve it. I think the problem is from like an effectuality standpoint, like from actually being an impactful conflict that's believable. There really isn't a central conflict. I think that's kind of what my issue is. Because sure, it's believable that no one's challenging him. Sure, it's believable that he's restricted himself to this one individual that quite literally holds the keys to the whole bank.
Yeah.
And has this massive personality deficit and insecurity about himself. And he rolls into that the whole time. That's a very common, believable thing. The problem is from a plot standpoint, when you're defining the entire film's conflict and momentum off of that one idea, because his charisma is never challenged, basically ever. Like it's hinted at up until the point, like everyone in the office is like, that's pretty weird. And they keep trying to call that one place and they never get anything back, and it's passive and sure, believable, whatever. But the fact that his charisma is never challenged makes it very weak and very not easy to invest in, I guess. I don't think it's a believability standpoint. Like, I would believe that this would happen. I think as an audience member, maybe it's hard to believe, if that makes sense. Like I would believe this scenario to happen, but I don't believe this scenario for the sake of the film. And I think that's my issue. I think because there's no opposition the whole time, and he's kind of just running over him, it's very hard to see through any other lens or see any change or look forward to the end of the film. Okay.
So you would have preferred if there'd been some moment where maybe his face had dropped a bit and you'd
Yes.
see. Okay. So like, all right, now I'm in like rewrites on the script. Maybe if he'd gotten like a little more like flustered when the inner door didn't seal properly or something like that, instead of just Cushing. That
Yeah.
might have been, yeah. Because I mean, I think at least it would be too much for him and Cushing to get into like fisticuffs in the bank vault or something like that. But I mean, even just a close up of him looking a little nervous, I would agree would add some more dimension to his character. I think Christian. Well, first off, Christian, I was curious, and Mitchell too. Were you guys taken in by the concept? Okay, he is going to electrocute his wife. You didn't see through that, did you?
I guess not. I mean, in the moment, I kind of just accepted
Okay.
it very quickly, which is interesting because I still stand by my sort of incomplete buying into his menacing. So it's interesting. Maybe I was just willing to give that threat credit because it was so unique and unexpected to me. But I didn't see through that at all. And though I anticipated the eventual sort of betrayal and framing of Forsyth, I did not anticipate the whole angle of him calling his wife and his kid and then being like, "Oh, we're fine. What are you talking about? We didn't speak to you today." That was surprising to me. I think the electrocution thing works, if nothing else, for being the most shocking or outstanding. Oh,
We got a
geez,
regular
I didn't even
James
mean
Bond
that.
here.
Yeah. Oh, ay, ay, ay. It's the most
Wonderful time of the year.
can't say electrifying. It's the least vanilla moments in this movie. So I think that's why I was so ready to buy into it, or at least give it credit.
Okay.
I was so skeptical. I didn't believe that for a second. Right when he was like, "Well, man, this place would be hard to rob, wouldn't it? Rob this place. You just let me in here. It's so silly of you letting me in here because I'm a robber." And that's basically what he's doing, right? And then he brings up this whole story, and it was too good to be true. It was too specific. I was like, this sounds like such a massive operation, but we're not hearing almost anything else about it. Like the signaling somebody outside, sure, you're panicked enough and you don't see it and everything, but I would have been like trying to remember everything for like the police, I feel like, or I would have been acted differently, I feel. Maybe not. I haven't been robbed yet. We're gonna find out when I get robbed. But other than that, yeah, I was heavily skeptical the whole time, and I definitely I definitely when I the what the hell is his name, Constable man called the house and he's like, everything's fine, and then I will add though, the one thing that didn't make a whole lot of tonal sense to me was just before the police are about to leave and everything, he's like, by the way, that was just a recording, and then he just explains his whole spiel about that, and the cops are like, oh, okay. And that was very, very weak reveal there, but
okay.
Yeah.
I will say, you mentioned kind of wanting to know more about how the heist was put together. The reveal, of course, in the end is that it's a much more simple operation than we were ever led to believe, and most of it was just fiction. I do wish there was like some element that was like, but how did this happen? Like, this couldn't possibly have worked this way if he was working alone. And the ending, of course, reveals, oh, well, it was Father Christmas helping him out. It was the Santa out on the sidewalk was somehow involved in it. But I wish that was a moment where we thought, oh, well, Santa must have done so and so. Because we see him outside a couple different times. He never really seems to move. And I'm not sure what help he could really be contributing on the pavement out front of the business. So I will admit there's some weakness there. I do think in terms of the threat of Andre Morel's character, though, I am kind of okay with how he comes across, because by the conclusion, I think we find out that he's a very different character than he's presented himself as. Because throughout most of the film, we're led to believe this is a man who will electrocute another person's wife and potentially do something horrible to his child at a moment's notice. But we find out at the end that that's kind of all theater. So I think the thrill for his character is kind of just in like humiliating and messing with Peter Cushing. And I think by the end, the implication is that he might be a thief and he might like knocking this guy down a peg, but he's not going to go so far as to ruin his entire life. And so that to me is kind of why he sort of backs down from framing him at the end, because he realizes, all right, I've had my fun. I've demoralized this man, but I'm not gonna like. I think there is kind of some kind of respect that he has for Peter Cushing's character, albeit kind of a warped version. He's kind of like a gentleman, robber baron, or like a highwayman, who's almost
alpha male. Andrew Tate follower.
He's kind of like this romantic presentation of what an outlaw is.
Yeah.
Rather than someone who's actually gonna, pull out a gun on a bank and tell everyone to get on the floor or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. 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 I also... oh, go ahead, Christian.
Sorry, Mitchell.
No. It's okay.
This comment is more of a closing comment, so maybe I should let you go.
Okay, I'll go. I do think we have to suspend disbelief a little bit. I just thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
We're led to believe maybe he's making this up. Maybe he isn't. Maybe this is his first heist ever. We actually don't know for sure. But I do think he presents and acts as though he has done this before and been successful. And I don't think that setup is very good, because it's almost like there was a trend that he was being successful and taking advantage of, let's be honest, like this is kind of the best personality. Peter Cushing's character is the best personality. So if you didn't have somebody that panicked and that completely like destroyed, then this would not work. Like you're literally relying entirely on your charisma. So from a planning perspective, it doesn't really make a lot of sense in that way. But I will add and say what you said about him being like a believable person and me being okay with his character. That's totally fine. I think I would say he's better than serviceable. I would definitely think he's very committed to that act that he's putting on. I just think having a little bit more of that dynamic, kind of like maybe a little bit more of a transition to the aha moment, or having some sort of developed emotion besides gloating and torturing him the whole time,
sure,
would be good.
Yeah, we do hear from the police constable, played by Kevin Stoney, who I recognize, of course, from Doctor Who, in the 60s. We hear from him like, oh, I've run into this guy before. He was pretending to be like a rear admiral. So we don't know a great deal about what he does, but I think the impression is that he's kind of like a confidence man, a swindler, kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio in Now You See Me or something like that. Somebody who's, puts on an act without anything really to back it up to get various things, not necessarily always through a heist, but that's entirely up to interpretation. Maybe he was heisting the Royal Navy or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it just completely flew out of my brain. What was I gonna say? The Christmas jet lag.
Well, I mean, while we wait for Christian to load, I do think we're kind of wrapping up the discussion here. I'll say I enjoyed Cash on Demand. I do recommend you check out the shorter UK cut, which is only 67 minutes. So even if you don't really love it, it's not a ton of time out of your day. I give it a 3 out of 5. I think a large part of why I do like it so much is I watched tons of Hammer in my freshman year of college. I rented the DVDs through the mail from Netflix, and a lot of them were like dual DVDs. And I got this with a movie that I actually wanted to see on a DVD, and I thought, well, I'll watch it anyway. I don't really expect much of it. I watched it on like a lazy Saturday morning, and I was totally surprised by it because I expected so little. So maybe my fond memories and feelings on it are just the result of low expectations, but I do think it's a solid little thriller. Mitchell, you might have to take the baton while Christian thinks further.
Man, I like this movie as much as a robber that was able to rob a bank and got away with it. Haha, Peter Cushing cry. Beta male.
I do think
Go ahead.
Cushing at least has a couple of nice character
Mhm.
moments
Yes.
where he effectively displays sincere fear without overplaying it.
Yes.
He has like a really strong way of conveying interiority just with his face.
Mhm.
So that's probably the biggest positive. For me.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Peter Cushing was perfect. He can fire whenever he's ready. And I think this is 2.5 out of 5. And I think it was a solid plot. It was short enough where it was like, you can't complain. You really can't complain. Even the good old American version, I think it was not that big of a deal. I don't think there was like a massive amount of fat to cut out of this. Yeah, it was a good, brisk little heist thing. It didn't scare me. 0 out of 5. Hammer film didn't scare me. Yep.
Yeah, we've talked about Cushing a lot now on the podcast, I guess,
Yeah.
between Hammer
Yes.
and Star Wars. Yeah, I'd echo mostly what Mitchell says. I still can't remember for the life of me what I was going to say earlier, which is going to drive me insane. But I guess I'll close by saying, if you're a nerd like us, you'll probably like parts of this.
Yes.
And if you're not a nerd like us, like if you're one of my parents, who are nerds in other ways, but not this type of nerd. If you're not this type of nerd, you might be a little bored by this. But, you
Mhm.
know, it's okay. 2.5. On a good day, I might have given it a 3. And I still enjoy Cushing's artistry as always.
Fair enough. I think Cushing definitely belongs in the Cookie Pocket Hall of Fame now. He's made, I think,
Yes.
3 official appearances. He's made a 4th if you count an undead CGI ghoul, and he's made so many appearances in Week in Review. So we'll put him up
Oh,
on
yeah.
the shelf. Maybe well, the viewers can't see the room behind me. Maybe I should build a shelf back here and put like a framed picture of Peter Cushing on it. That'd be fun. Build out the set.
Oh, yes. Yes. Who else would be in that Hall of Fame? Probably like Francis. to start
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah. Lucio Fulci. But speaking of Week in Review, what have you guys been watching over the holidays, or reading, or seeing, or listening to, just in general?
Wait a minute, Christian. Wait a minute. I think you know what I'm going to say. I think
do.
we might have to, unless, if you're on board with this. Are you on board with this?
Are you pointing
I
at me?
feel
Pointing at Christian.
yeah. I feel. I mean, it's so obvious, and it feels like a missed opportunity if we don't. But I also feel like guilty and wrong talking about this before Zach.
I know, that's what I'm
Is
I'm
this going to be
totally
the rare
conflicted.
occasion where I have to edit this episode,
Yes.
so that won't mean anything. I know
I
the
feel like-
story
I feel
of
like-
Nosferatu.
No.
It's,
I
you
feel
know.
like we should save this for all 3 of us.
He was
This is
turning
really
on and off the
fair.
lights. I know how it works.
The hash-slinging slasher.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, Mitchell and I
Okay, we'll
saw
do it.
Nosferatu
Mhm.
Fine.
while Zach was across the pond.
Where it doesn't
and-
come out. Well, it didn't come out until like today, January 5th.
Yes.
So
And we didn't know at the time that the 3 of us would be in the same place at the same
Mhm.
time. So we weren't deliberately excluding Zach. It just happened.
yes.
Yes.
Um,
I feel like we can talk about this without totally spoiling the story. I think it's
Yeah.
good to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm in it for like the
Nosferatu.
visuals and the artistry, which I don't think you can really spoil in a discussion. I know
Okay.
about the facial hair, so the biggest spoiler
All right.
is out of the way.
If Zach enjoys Lily Rose Depp moaning, it will be
Oh,
a
no.
5 out of 5.
10 out of 10.
boy.
Quality.
Boy.
So Nosferatu, right, okay.
That's right.
Christian and I were traumatized, very much so. Mostly by the audience members laughing, but also because of the movie. I've actually read that this is a common trend, people laughing during moments that are not supposed to be laughed at. And I thought about it later, and it was more frustrating to think about. So, as a sidebar, typical Eggers fashion here, right? There's a lot of very obvious. I don't know what else to say. Like bits. Bits is the classic noun we reference, and I just think if you're coming into this knowing it's an Eggers movie and have seen at least 2 of them, I'll say, any of the 2, then you probably know what to expect. It's very gothic, very, very invasive, very disgusting. Surprisingly, I was very surprised, and I was going into this like, okay, it can't be worse than The Witcher or whatever. Like, it can't possibly be like more trying. It was worse. It was definitely worse. And it was worse than Subspecies too, which was a good. I think my dad might have brought that up as a comparison that I could make, and I think that's a good like little reference point. It's way more deserved, the disgustingness and nudity here. But yeah, it was very traumatizing is the best word, and disgusted. And I think the execution of the plot was very, very believable. It was very, I mean, everybody's at the top of their acting game, I think, was one of the main reasons, honestly. Every character feels very distinct and freshly portrayed, in my opinion. And I'm not as privy, I don't think, to like the actual full-on Bram Stoker Dracula story as maybe Christian is, but I wasn't thinking a whole lot about Dracula the whole time. I was really thinking more about the original Nosferatu, and I think a lot of those cultural beats that Eggers really wanted to focus on, and a lot of those distinct influences, like including like from art, like from the time or referencing the time. He's clearly very invested in making sure that became real, including wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård does a fantastic, believable job. They make him, designed like Vlad the Impaler, and his accent is very convincing and brooding, and he's scary not in like an alien type way, and he's not scary in like I really am sexy, ooh, Dracula man, and every girl's like, please come to me now. Apparently that's still happening. I don't think that was the intent, but nonetheless, very disturbing. Very disturbing character.
Anyone over 6 feet with a deep voice, it doesn't matter.
Yep. The mustache can be as long as it wants. The legs can be the least developed. It doesn't matter. Christian, go ahead. I'm done.
That's a great ending point. Yeah, it's Eggers at his. It's very Eggers. I mean, it's a glacial pace most of the time. I think that sort of took me aback.
Mm-hmm.
The production design is immaculate,
Yep.
as good as anything else he's ever done in that respect. And I was thinking a lot about the Dracula story, in part because I sort of read the book up to like maybe 70% of the way through, and I gave up on it to my great shame. But and I had watched Herzog's version of Nosferatu 2 months ago, and of course we talked about Coppola's and Murnau's on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So this stuff's been in my head a lot for the past few years. So I think I was a little tired of Dracula, and maybe a little bit wanting Eggers to do something more than a straight adaptation. And I guess he sort of recontextualizes the setting, and he renames a lot of the characters. Like the Lily Rose Depp is not named Mina, and Nicholas Hoult is not named Jonathan Harker. But I think what really makes this work is the final act, which I don't want to discuss at length because it maybe verges on spoiler territory for Zach. But I will admit that for probably the first half or more of this movie, I was kind of not bored because I was interested in seeing how he dealt with these themes and these key plot events. But to somebody that had seen all the other sort of major film Nosferatus or Dracula, it felt a little rote, even with his incredible style all over all of it. So I'm a little curious to see what Zach makes of it. I think it's really properly nasty in its nasty moments. It's a lot, and it's very effective in that way. And I think a lot of the laughter is just people grappling with their discomfort. Probably it doesn't make it less annoying. But and there are a couple of moments that seem like they might be intentionally funny too, like Willem Dafoe.
Oh yeah.
And there's some interesting like allegiance shifts, and I was compelled by it. I thought it was kind of a daring way to finish the film and to, I guess, center it differently. I'm intentionally speaking in a vague manner, But I look forward to hearing what Zach has to say about it. I landed on a 4.
Mhm.
I think because of its similarities to other Draculas, I'm not really jumping to watch it again. But I think on a craft level, it definitely deserves that 4.
Might be Aaron Taylor Johnson's best film.
Okay.
He was very good.
I hate to say it, he's better in this than Craven.
Yeah, he does do a lot of Craven the Hunter type projects, but he's a good actor. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping to see it in a couple days. I will say the name changes are from Murnau's Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because that movie was made without the copyright to Dracula. So they went, well, if
Another
we
reason
change
why.
some things, which is why Dracula is called Orlok in that movie. And because no one will ever, but they were sued and the movie was meant to be destroyed, but it now famously was not.
Thank goodness for that.
Yeah. Originally, it was going to star Anya Taylor-Joy and still Lily Rose Depp, which is a big missed opportunity, I think. But at the same time, it was going to be Harry Styles instead of Nicholas Hoult, and I don't think that's a missed opportunity. So, it's a trade-off.
I don't know if this is, you can correct me, it's maybe alternative facts, maybe fake news, but I'm pretty sure Eggers said you don't want to be in this film. And I totally understand. I am glad Anya Taylor-Joy was not in this, Zach, okay?
I think I am too.
Oh, okay.
I respect the craft, okay? I respect the craft. Anya's going strong. But we'll want to hear your opinion, Zach. We want to hear your opinion.
I maybe I'll have to do my own little one-man Cookie Pocket episode about it.
I would welcome that.
Well, I'm gonna maybe kind of on a similar note, but a more arrogant one. I'm not gonna talk about something that I watched for my final week in review of the holiday season, but something that I made because on the YouTube channel right now is the first in what I hope will be a series. Which is called Ghost Stories for All Seasons. These will be readings.
Mitchell's checking for this right now on his phone.
These will be readings of classic Victorian ghost stories that I'll do hopefully 4 times a year, 1 for each season. The first in the series is The Kit Bag by Algernon Blackwood, and it's just an audiobook. It's just me reading it, but I like ghost stories. I have been told many a time, you should do audiobooks, or you should do narration. So in the ultimate vain move, I decided to agree with everybody and go for it. So we'll see. It's mostly just a way to get some stuff out on the channel that I'm enthusiastic about, that I have fun with, and that is so much easier and less stressful to put together than making short films. Oh, there I am. But yeah, so check it out. The Kit Bag by Algernon Blackwood. All of the branding and illustrations are by Gloria, my girlfriend, who featured on the show last season as a guest. And if you have any recommendations for spring ghost stories, I'm in a rut trying to find them right now. So please do drop them in the comments and smash that like button. I'm a real YouTuber now.
Yes.
You can become a channel member and pay me for very little service. But yes, please do take a look at it and let me know what you think. And maybe next episode I'll talk about a real thing.
Oh, this is real, Zach.
Oh, thank you.
This is real. You are real. Your opinion is valid.
All right, rundown?
Yep.
Yes, I am adding 2 things that I just thought of to
Wowzers.
the list live.
Live.
And then I'm sending it to Mitchell.
And now I'm getting it.
And the fun thing about this one is I'm going to start this time because I've asked Mitchell to start 1 gajillion billion times.
I need rest.
And he does. So, I'm finally taking some freaking responsibility in my life. Okay.
This has been a very raw, bitter episode, I've noticed.
And Zach hasn't even tried running away.
Very in keeping with the holiday season.
Yeah, well, we're at the sort of falling action of the holiday season, and now we're realizing the real world is awaiting us.
Yes.
Alas. 1 minute. Here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Sharing a title abbreviation with Call of Duty.
2 out of 5?
Orchestral stress.
3 out of 5.
A row with the missus.
3 out of 5.
Champagne and dancing girls.
2 out of 5.
Banking and the few dignified professions left in the world.
3 out of 5.
Bowler hats.
Oh, 4 out of 5.
Not looking much like a gunman.
3 out of 5.
Hepcats.
2 out of 5.
Just some money.
4 out of 5.
People in the provinces.
3 out of 5.
Smoother, more sociable bank robberies.
3 out of 5.
Pearson abuse.
3 out of 5.
Hatred of breaking the law.
2 out of 5.
Gun discipline.
4 out of 5.
Dog license.
3 out of 5.
Last minute Christmas shopping.
3 out of 5.
Forgetting the money.
2 out of 5.
Squares.
4 out of 5.
Salvation Army Santa.
4 out of 5.
Non-Christmas
second.
Christmas movie.
3 out of 5.
Oh, time.
Ooh.
Oh,
Zach just
we
got
finished.
away before the phone call from the mercantile insurance people. Oh, it's over.
Wow. Yeah, I'm impressed. Wow. We've nothing to preview, right?
No, other than the vague notion that we may return for another season.
Oh.
We will return
yeah.
for another season of Cookie Pocket. Boo, 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 boo.
I think we teased
Maybe.
this at the end of the last season too, that we might shake up the format. You might be surprised at how we return. You might not. Isn't that intriguing?
We might even decide as soon as we finish recording this.
We may. Ooh. Tune in
may
this
have been-
spring or summer or maybe fall. Who knows?
Or maybe winter next, maybe only Christmas movies. There's so many of
Absolutely.
them.
There are so many questions. It's like Lost. Don't you want to keep watching? Anyway, happy holidays. Happy New Year from all of us here at
Ooh.
Cookie Pocket. And we hope you tune in whenever we appear next.